Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to St. John's First Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bridgeton, New Jersey, and our hybrid Bible study on the book of Genesis. And today we will be looking in at chapter 39 as Joseph once again takes center stage in this opening book of Holy Scripture. Now, today we find out in greater detail that Joseph had been bought by someone called Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. He was also an Egyptian, purchased from the Ishmaelites, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And we noted that these are the descendants of Ishmael, the half-brother of Isaac. Now, verse 2 is very important here. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master Potiphar. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and Potiphar made Joseph the overseer of his house. Now, it's important to note the significance of the language here in verse number 2. Right at the very beginning here of this chapter, we are informed that God is with Joseph very intimately, very obviously. Even though we note that God does not speak directly to Joseph, as he did previously, of course, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph's time here in Egypt is being centered on God. God is with him every step of the way, even though he doesn't, speak to him directly like the previous individuals here in the Old Testament, here in the book of Genesis. From that time he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Again, all because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, that is Potiphar, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So clearly, get my words in there, Joseph was very well regarded by Potiphar. Potiphar could see that the Lord had blessed him and that the Lord was with him every step of the way. He was doing exceptionally well as a slave. The important thing to take into consideration here, which was raised in the Bible study on Sunday, is that Potiphar trusted Joseph implicitly. Even though Joseph was Potiphar's servant, he still trusted Joseph immensely. Now, the next verse, verse 7. Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. This is important, as after a period of time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." So basically, she had developed feelings for him, attracted to him, and she basically wanted to have relations with him. However, in verse 8, Joseph refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything back from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So very good response, isn't it, from Joseph here to the woman's, Potiphar's wife's, advances. Note here the difference in his reaction and his response to his two brothers, whom we have talked about in recent hybrid Bible studies. Were Reuben and Judah responsible when it came to this kind of relationship? The answer, of course, is no. Reuben, of course, with his father's concubine, and Judah sleeping with the prostitute. So this whole issue of adultery has already been seen here in the pages of Old Testament times. Of course, a sin against God, that is looking forward, of course, to the Ten Commandments given later on here in the Old Testament. Verse 10, as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her or to be with her. So clearly this is persistence here, and she keeps asking the same thing of him over and over and over again. So he consistently rejects her advances. However, one day, verse 11, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. As soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of the household and said to them, See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Okay, a lot of things to digest here. Question. Why did Joseph go back into the house? Why did Joseph go back into the house knowing there were no other slaves present in the household? Was Joseph tempted? Joseph, was he a perfect person? The answer is no. He has feelings. He is a sinner just like the rest of us. Could we suggest here that maybe he was slightly tempted to actually do the deed? Again, that is something for you to take into consideration as well. Note here the deception that would be used with this cloak that had been left behind, this robe that had been left behind, this garment. Remember how his tunic, the one we talked about a couple of weeks ago, was used by his brothers, smeared in blood, to convince their father that something terrible had happened to their brother. Now, another cloak, another form of deception is taking place here in Genesis chapter number 39. So again, very interesting parallels considering what happened before in Genesis chapter number 37. So while Potiphar is still out of the household, obviously Potiphar's wife is planting her story, so to speak, and she basically lists 3 excuses or 3 elements to her story here. Number 1, she places the blame on her husband. See, he has brought among us. It is Potiphar's fault, nothing to do with me. 2, she emphasizes the fact that Joseph is not an Egyptian. He brought to us, my husband's fault, brought to us, a Hebrew. It is the Hebrew's fault, not mine. It's like today, when something bad happens in our society, or somebody breaks into our house, or this or that or the other, it can't be that. It is the foreigner's fault. It is their fault. It couldn't be one of us who did it. Let us blame the foreigner for all that has happened. Essentially, that is what is happening here in Genesis chapter number 39. And number 3, she basically paints a picture of Joseph not just having the audacity to go against her, but the entire household, the whole household here. See, he has brought among us a Hebrew. Again, point 1. Point 2, Hebrew, to laugh at us, plural. So threefold excuse given here, or elements given here by Potiphar's wife. As soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. There's a deception taking place here as well. She's got all the different parts of her story here. Then she laid up his garments by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, The Hebrew servant, the foreigner, whom you have brought among us, your fault, came in to me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. Again, deception, deception, deception. We have seen it before, time and time again in Genesis, and is taking place right here as well. Needless to say, Potiphar is not happy. As soon as he had heard the words, his anger was kindled, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. Note here the parallels in these final verses, verses 21 through 23, and indeed the opening verses of this chapter, verses 2 through 5. Note the parallels here if you can. But the Lord was with Joseph, we've been told about that before, and showed him steadfast love, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So the parallels here with Potiphar, and now the keeper of the prison. The keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Again, Joseph was put in charge of all the things of the household before. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. Joseph was in charge. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, just like Potiphar beforehand. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. So again, that is proof in the pudding that God was with Joseph every step of the way, whether he was with his brothers beforehand and they sold him off into slavery, whether he was in the house of Potiphar, or whether he was in jail instead. Very significant chapter here, which will lead us into a very significant portion of Genesis next time, God willing, where we will head into the chapters 40 and 41. Indeed, if there is time to cover all of those things which talk very significantly about what will happen to the two prisoners alongside of him, not to mention what will happen in the land of Egypt going forward, as well as Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams in chapter number 41.